Hi guys, my name is Arya and I'm going to be your instructor for this course today. So in this ethical hacking full course video, you'll be learning almost everything that is required for you to get started as an ethical hacker. So come, let's quickly go over the topics that we are going to be covering today. Firstly, we're going to be going through the basics of cybersecurity and cryptography, where we'll be learning the key concepts of confidentiality, integrity and availability, and how the cryptographic concepts also tie into the whole picture. Next, we'll be looking at some cyber threats. We'll be seeing how these cyber threats actually affect our computer, and then we'll also see how we can mitigate them. After which, we'll be looking into the history of ethical hacking. We'll learn how this all began in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and then we'll be looking into the fundamentals of networking and ethical hacking. In this, we'll be learning the various tools that are used in ethical hacking and also the network architectures that these tools are used in. After this, we'll be having a look into that is penetration testers all around the world. We'll be learning how to install this on our local systems. We'll be learning the tools that come along with it and where we should be using them. After that, we'll be learning about penetration testing. And penetration testing is a subset of ethical hacking. So in this, we'll be learning about a tool called Metasploit, and using Metasploit, we'll be learning more about vulnerability analysis and how we can install backdoors in different computer systems and take advantages of these vulnerabilities. Now, Nmap is also another tool that we are going to be discussing in this course. We'll be learning how we can use Nmap to gather information from our networks and how we can use this information to our advantage. After that, we'll be learning deeply about 3 cyber attacks that are there in this industry. First is cross-site scripting, secondly, distributed denial of service, and thirdly, SQL injection attacks. Now, we'll be doing these attacks ourselves on dummy targets and learning more about these attacks and how they're orchestrated. And thus, we'll be learning more about how we can mitigate them if we actually become ethical hackers. Now, we'll also be discussing some very advanced cryptographic methods called steganography, which is basically used for hiding digital code inside images. Last but not the least, we'll be also discussing how you could become an ethical hacker yourself. So we'll be discussing a roadmap. We'll also be discussing the job profiles that are there in the industry, and we'll also be discussing the companies that are hiring for these job profiles along with the salaries that they are trying to offer. Also, we won't be leaving you hanging right there. We'll also be discussing the 50 most common interview questions that come along with these job profiles so that you can snag that job interview. And if you do like our content in the end, please leave us a like, please leave a comment if you want to, and do hit the subscribe button so that you can join our ever-growing community of learners.
It can be rightfully said that today's generation lives on the internet, and we general users are almost ignorant as to how those random bits of ones and zeros reach securely to our computer. It's not magic, it's work and sweat that makes sure that your packets reach to you unsniffed. Today, I, Arya Paul from Edureka, I'm here to tell you guys about how cybersecurity makes this all possible. Now, before we begin, let me brief you all about the topics that we're going to cover today. So basically, we're going to ask 3 questions that are important to cybersecurity. Firstly, we're going to see why cybersecurity is needed. Next, we're going to see what exactly is cybersecurity. And in the end, I'm going to show you all through a scenario how cybersecurity can save a whole organization from organized cybercrime. Okay, so let's get started. Now, as I just said, we are living in a digital era. Whether it be booking a hotel room, ordering some dinner, or even booking a cab, we're constantly using the internet and inherently constantly generating data. This data is generally stored on the cloud, which is basically a huge data server or data center that you can access online. Also, we use an array of devices to access this data. Now, for a hacker, it's a golden age. With so many access points, public IP addresses, and constant traffic and tons of data to exploit, black hat hackers are having one hell of a time exploiting vulnerabilities and creating malicious software for the same. Above that, cyber attacks are evolving by the day. Hackers are becoming smarter and more creative with their malwares, and how they bypass virus scans and firewalls still baffle many people. Let's go through some of the most common types of cyber attacks now. So as you guys can see, I've listed out 8 cyber attacks that have plagued us since the beginning of the internet. Let's go through them briefly. So first on the list, we have general malwares. Malware is an all-encompassing term for a variety of cyber threats, including trojans, viruses, and worms. Malware is simply defined as code with malicious intent that typically steals data or destroys something on the computer. Next on the list, we have phishing, often posing as a request for data from a trusted third party Phishing attacks are sent via email and ask users to click on a link and enter their personal data. Phishing emails have gotten much more sophisticated in recent years, making it difficult for some people to discern a legitimate request for information from a false one. Phishing emails often fall into the same category as spam, but are more harmful than just a simple ad. Next on the list, we have password attacks. A password attack is exactly what it sounds like: a third party trying to gain access to your system by cracking a user's password. Next up is DDoS, which stands for Distributed Denial of Service. A DOS attack focuses on disrupting the service of a network. Attackers send high volumes of data or traffic through the network that is making a lot of connection requests, until the network becomes overloaded and can no longer function. Next up, we have man-in-the-middle attacks. By impersonating the endpoint in an online information exchange, that is the connection from your smartphone to a website, the MITM attacks can obtain information from the end users and entity he or she is communicating with. For example, if you're banking online, the man in the middle would communicate with you by impersonating your bank and communicate with the bank by impersonating you. The man in the middle would then receive all the information transferred between both parties, which could include sensitive data such as bank accounts and personal information. Next up, we have drive-by